Would you raise a child that wasn't yours? I almost did. Not because I'm a saint, but because everyone around me, her friends, her family, even her therapist, expected me to. Rachel got pregnant while we were still married, claimed it was mine, then confessed it was her ex's, until a secret DNA test proved it wasn't his either. My name's William. I'm 32. Until recently, I thought I had a decent grip on life. Married for 5 years to Rachel, who I thought was loyal, smart, and, sane. I lived like most guys trying to keep the peace. But when my wife got pregnant by someone else, and expect me to be cool with it. Yeah, that version of me died real fast. So let's dive into the story. I was halfway through reheating leftover curry when Rachel dropped the bomb. She stood in the doorway, holding a tiny white stick like it was some kind of golden ticket. I'm pregnant, she said, all breathy and trembling, like she was announcing the second coming of Christ. I blinked. What? She smiled, shaky, too wide, and repeated it. Pregnant. Baby. Ours. God's timing. My first thought. Bullshit. See, we weren't trying. Hell, we weren't even slipping. Condoms, every time. I'd even booked a vasectomy consult a few weeks ago because we agreed, no kids. Not now. Not ever. So, unless the condom fairy failed spectacularly or Jesus personally hand-delivered some divine swimmers, this math wasn't mathing. I asked the obvious. How? Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Textbook manipulation, level 1. She launched into some melodramatic monologue about miracles and 1 in a million chances and how maybe this was a sign. Like, my skepticism was the real problem here. I just stared, dead silent. The silence that makes people fidget. She kept going, throwing words at me like they were confetti at a party I didn't agree to attend. And then came the guilt trip. Maybe you don't want this baby, but I do. She said it like I'd just kicked a puppy. Right. Now, I'm not a genius, but I'm not a dumbass either. I told her we were getting a paternity test. Not a suggestion, a demand. That's when the real theatrics started. Sobbing, hyperventilating, accusing me of not trusting her, accusing me of being cruel and emotionally abusive for doubting her at her most vulnerable. I didn't yell. I didn't even argue. I just stood there, cold as hell, because somewhere deep down I already knew. You don't cry like that over a false accusation. You cry like that when you're caught. She avoided the test for 2 full weeks. Excuses stacked like a Jenga tower. Couldn't get an appointment, didn't want stress during early pregnancy. Her therapist said I was controlling. The works. Then one night, she came to me shaking like a leaf. No makeup, baggy hoodie. That I'm the victim face she always pulled during fights she started. It's Darren's, she whispered, like that somehow made it better. I just stared at her. Darren. Her ex. The guy she swore was just a phase back in college. The guy who cheated on her 3 times, blocked her on everything, and moved across the city to avoid her drama. That Darren. You slept with your ex? I asked. My voice was flat, mechanical. I wasn't angry yet. I was in shock. Rachel launched into another monologue. It just happened. She was confused. She wanted closure. It was a moment of weakness. She even had the nerve to call it complicated. No. You know what's complicated? Tax law. This was just trash behavior wrapped in delusion. I asked when it happened. She said right before our anniversary, which, ironically, was the same weekend I'd been out of town visiting my brother. I even remembered texting her from the airport while she was crying in bed. Guess she wasn't crying that hard. And here's the part that truly fried my brain. After admitting the baby wasn't mine, she still acted like we were in this together. She clung to me like a parasite begging its host not to die, said we could move forward. That love means forgiveness. That I could be a father in all the ways that matter. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I poured myself a drink. I'm not a big drinker, but sometimes you need something stronger than sanity to get through the evening. Rachel went to bed crying. Again, probably rehearsing for her next round of sympathy points with Olivia, her therapist, and every other emotionally codependent moron in her circle. And me? I just sat in the kitchen, staring at the wall, wondering how the hell I went from married and stable to accidental stepdad to my wife's affair baby. The next morning, she acted like everything was fine. Made coffee, talked about baby names, wanted to know if we could start planning the nursery. I didn't answer. I was already planning my exit. The truth was out. Darren was the father. And my wife, the woman I trusted, the woman I married, had detonated our life like it was a casual fire drill. But what came next? That was somehow worse. Because while Rachel gave me the truth, barely, she wasn't done manipulating me. Not by a long shot. No, this wasn't the end. It was the start of a slow-motion train wreck, and everyone, was lining up to hand me a conductor's hat. Apparently, I was still supposed to be the hero in the story where my wife cheated, lied, and got pregnant by someone else. And the rest of the world? They were about to make it their mission to turn me into the villain for not playing along. So, Rachel finally admits it's Darren's kid, and for a full 24 hours, I thought maybe, this nightmare had a bottom. Spoiler, it didn't. Because just when I figured I could quietly detach, get a lawyer, and cut ties with minimal drama, Darren popped up. Not physically. No, that would have taken balls, but as a name that wouldn't shut up. Apparently, Rachel had told him, or tried to. She called, texted, and even emailed like it was a damn job interview. And guess what? Darren went full ghost mode. No replies. No interest. No, let's co-parent like mature adults. Just straight-up radio silence. Shocking, right? The dude who cheated on her in college and bailed the second things got remotely emotional wasn't exactly Father of the Year material. Imagine my surprise. Rachel, though? Oh, she was stunned. She kept saying crap like, but he said he missed me once, or he told me I was the one who got away last year. Yeah, between beer pong rounds at some bar while trying to get into his Uber without puking. Real Hallmark stuff. But even Darren's silence didn't stop her delusion train. She figured, hey, if Darren won't step up, William still might. So she pivoted hard. Suddenly, it wasn't about Darren at all. Suddenly, it was all about how I could be the real dad. You know, the stable one. The guy with the job, the apartment, the decent credit score, and the moral backbone. She actually said that last part with a straight face. Moral backbone. The same woman who got knocked up by her ex while I was visiting family was now appealing to my sense of duty. It was around then that the emotional blackmail went full throttle. She cried about being abandoned, about how she'd made a mistake but didn't deserve to go through this alone, how it wasn't the baby's fault, how the baby deserved a father, and on and on and on. I wasn't unsympathetic to the baby. That kid didn't ask to be born into a telenovela. But I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped into raising someone else's kid just because Rachel thought my moral compass would override basic self-respect. She even tried to pull the, but we're married, we're a team, line. I just laughed. Dry, tired, humorless. Like, sure, teamwork. Only the quarterback ran off mid-game and handed the ball to a guy from another team, and now I'm supposed to raise their baby while they sit on the bench drinking Gatorade. And right when I thought it couldn't get messy, boom. Karma took one look at Darren and said, tag, you're it. Tanya, Darren's actual wife, found out. Now that was a nuclear event. Apparently, she saw a message Rachel had sent Darren on an old tablet. Something like, we need to talk about the baby. Tanya put 2 and 2 together, and instead of quietly confronting him like a normal person, she went DEFCON 1. From what I heard through the grapevine, okay, from Rachel's sobbing phone call to Olivia that I overheard, Tanya blew up his life in under 48 hours. She kicked him out, changed the locks, and plastered screenshots all over her social media. Names, dates, baby talk, everything. Darren tried denying it. Said Rachel was crazy. Said he was being set up. Tanya didn't care. She was already on the phone with a divorce attorney, blocking him faster than you can say deadbeat dad. And suddenly, Rachel wasn't glowing with that smug, I still got it energy anymore. She was terrified. Because not only was Darren not swooping in to play happy family, he was actively ghosting even harder now that his marriage had imploded. His response to the whole thing was to change his number and deactivate his socials. Rachel had burned her marriage and torched Darren's too, and now she was sitting in the ashes wondering why the smoke smelled like regret. And guess who she turned to? That's right, me. The fallback plan. The better man. The guy who was strong enough to forgive. She didn't even try to hide it. She straight up said, you're not like Darren. You don't just walk away. Except, I could, and I was. But the worst part wasn't Rachel. It was everyone around her. Suddenly, I was the bad guy. It started with Olivia, Rachel's best friend, self-declared empathy coach, and walking Pinterest board of bad advice. She sent me this long, patronizing message about how fatherhood is about love, not DNA. Said I was punishing an innocent child out of pride, that I was making it about me. No shit, I was making it about me. I was the one being asked to raise a kid I had nothing to do with because my wife couldn't keep her legs closed while I was out of town. Then Rachel's mom chimed in. Her dad, too. These are people who never called me unless they needed help with a printer or a loan, now suddenly acting like I was part of some divine plan to save their daughter from herself. Be the bigger man, they said. You're her husband, they reminded me. She needs support. You know who didn't say a word during all this? Mark, my best friend. He just looked at me, shook his head, and said, "Don't you dare let them trap you." And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cold. I was being played. Everyone wanted a fairy tale ending. One where the man forgives, the woman cries, and the baby gets a father figure. No one wanted to face the fact that Rachel's actions had consequences. Well, I was about to introduce them to the concept. Because I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to collect proof. And when the time came, I'd let the truth speak louder than every guilt trip, group chat, and manipulative sob story Rachel could spin. By the time the group chat started blowing up, I already had a plan. But let me back up. After Darren vanished like a coward and Rachel's sob story tour kicked into high gear, the real fun began. The kind that involves passive-aggressive texts, performative sympathy, and unsolicited therapy jargon from people who barely knew me. First came Olivia, again. She wasn't just Rachel's best friend. She was apparently now the unofficial PR manager for Operation Shame William into fatherhood. Her texts went from condescending to outright delusional. You're traumatizing Rachel. Rejecting this baby is emotional abuse. Real men take responsibility, even when it's hard. I didn't respond. Not because I was speechless, but because sarcasm alone wasn't enough anymore. I needed receipts. Hard ones. So I did what any sane, falsely accused man surrounded by a cult of enablers would do. I started collecting. Every smug voice note Olivia sent. Saved. Every guilt-tripping text from Rachel's mom. Screenshot. Every half-assed apology from Rachel followed by some manipulative, but you promised forever nonsense. Archived. I even backed up the voice memos from Rachel's teary rants. You know, the ones where she admitted sleeping with Darren was technically a mistake, but somehow still better than being ignored. For the record, I wasn't ignoring her. I was just playing fewer games of emotional whack-a-mole every night. Meanwhile, the group chats were lighting up like a dumpster fire. There was the one with Rachel's friend circle. All women I'd hosted for wine nights, helped move apartments, even picked up from the airport more than once. Now they were holding informal tribunals about how emotionally stunted I was. Olivia leaked messages from our private conversations to spin a new narrative. William, the emotionally unavailable husband who left his poor wife high and dry after a tiny mistake. Tiny, right. Then there was Rachel's new therapist. Yeah, she got a new one. Her old therapist apparently didn't support her growth. Translation, she didn't blindly validate the cheating. The new one? A dream come true for people who thrive on weaponized therapy speak. Rachel started parroting things like, "You're exhibiting avoidant attachment behaviors. This is triggering my abandonment wounds. I think you're projecting unresolved trauma onto my pregnancy. Oh, and my personal favorite, refusing to help raise this child is reinforcing patriarchal toxicity." Sure, patriarchy. That's what made you bang your ex and lie for weeks. Got it. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend myself to anyone. Why? Because I knew what they really wanted, a reaction, and I wasn't giving them the satisfaction. I just smiled politely, nodded when necessary, and kept building my digital folder titled "Just in Case." The part that really broke me wasn't Rachel or her cronies. It was the fact that they genuinely believed their version of events. That I was cold, that I lacked empathy, that I was being petty for not standing by her. Like the kid was a broken sink she'd accidentally dropped, and I was just refusing to help clean up the mess. The worst offender? Olivia again. She showed up at my office. Yep, just casually dropped by, like she wasn't 3 steps away from getting hit with a restraining order, to check in. She sat across from my desk, legs crossed, tone dripping with fake concern. "William, don't let this mistake define you. You're better than this. Be the father you know you can be." I didn't say a word. just stared at her like she'd suggested I start selling meth in the break room. Eventually, she stood up, patted my shoulder, patted my goddamn shoulder, and said, "You're breaking her spirit." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I sent a text to Mark. "Next time Olivia shows up, I'm installing a moat." He replied, "Put gators in it." Mark was the only one who didn't treat this situation like some twisted Lifetime movie. He didn't say sorry. He didn't offer advice. He just said, "When you're ready to make your move, make it loud." And I was getting ready. Because while Rachel played the tragic heroine in her group chats and therapy sessions, I was getting everything I needed to blow her fantasy world sky high. Photos, screenshots, voicemails. One even had her laughing with Olivia about how William's so passive, he'll cave eventually. That one went in the very special folder. But I didn't release anything yet. Not because I had second thoughts, but because the silence was working in my favor. Rachel was getting nervous. Every day I didn't yell, scream, or threaten made her twitchier. She'd text things like, "We need to talk," or "I know this hurts, but we can heal." I didn't respond. She tried calling. I let it ring. She emailed, deleted without reading. I wasn't ghosting her. I was letting her dig the hole deeper. And dig she did. Because soon enough, the baby would be born. And I knew something Rachel didn't. Darren might have been the guy she thought was the father, but I'd already seen the timeline. I'd already noticed the dates didn't line up. I'd already done the math. And just in case, I'd already requested a second paternity test, one she wouldn't know about. Because something about this whole situation reeked. And it wasn't just betrayal. It was desperation. Rachel had pinned her entire life on one giant lie, and she thought I'd quietly carry it to term for her. But I wasn't just walking away. I was walking away with proof. And when the final bomb dropped, she wouldn't even know what hit her. The baby came in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't there. Obviously. Rachel texted me a blurry photo of a hospital bassinet and a message that said, "She's perfect. You'd love her if you gave her a chance." I stared at the screen for a solid minute, then turned off my phone. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew something she didn't. I'd already seen the lab results. See, a few weeks before the birth, while Rachel was busy recruiting more emotional hostages in her support group, I was doing a little quiet recon of my own. I'd gotten a hold of one of her prenatal appointment summaries, the kind that listed estimated conception dates. And that's when it clicked. Even Darren didn't make sense. The timeline didn't add up. The conception window was off by at least a week. And guess what? I wasn't in town then either. So I did what any self-respecting betrayed husband with a half-functioning brain would do. I waited until the baby was born, then used a third-party DNA service and a little help from a friend at a lab to get a sample tested. Rachel didn't know. Hell, she thought I was still halfway convinced the baby was Darren's. But the results? Not me. Not Darren. A third man. Someone completely different. Someone I didn't recognize until I saw the name. Jason. A bartender. From Rachel's bachelorette party. Yeah. While I was out here buying her overpriced champagne and writing heartfelt vows, she was out back behind some dive bar making a mistake with a guy who probably couldn't spell monogamy even if you spotted him the first 6 letters. I had to read the results twice to process them. And once it sank in, I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I laughed. Because, of course, it wasn't Darren. Of course, it was someone even worse. Some random one-night stand that Rachel conveniently forgot to mention in her dramatic confessions. Because she wasn't trying to come clean. She was just trying to manage the fallout. And now? Now the foundation of her entire post-baby sympathy tour had crumbled. Darren wasn't the father. I wasn't the father. The real dad was a guy who probably couldn't pick Rachel out of a lineup. So I waited a week. Long enough for her to post the baby's name on Instagram, fish for likes, and flood her captions with crap like "new beginnings" and "forgiveness is love." Then I showed up. Not physically. No, I had better plans than that. I emailed her. Simple. Direct. No emotion. I know the truth. The paternity test confirms it's not mine. Not Darren's either. You lied to everyone. I'm done being your scapegoat. Good luck explaining this one. Within minutes, she called. I let it go to voicemail. Then the text came. Wait, what test? You're wrong. Please, let's talk. William, I'm begging you. You don't understand. Oh, I understood perfectly. She wasn't scared because she hurt me. She was scared because I had proof. Proof that would blow her fragile web of half-truths into ash. Proof that made every one of her lies, about Darren, about the timing, about me, public enemy number one. And the best part? I wasn't even angry anymore. I was free. Because this whole time, I'd been walking around with this weight on my chest, this crushing pressure to be the good guy, the bigger man, the noble husband who swallowed betrayal with a smile because, hey, kids need dads. But now I didn't have to be anything. I wasn't the dad. I wasn't even the backup. I was just the guy who'd finally stepped off the ride before it crashed. Rachel's next move was the Hail Mary, the one they all use when their reality starts to collapse. She showed up at my apartment. She looked awful. Pale. Hollow. Eyes red from crying. Or panic. Maybe both. She had the baby with her, bundled up in pink, still fresh enough to smell like the hospital. She stood there in the hallway, shaking, and said, "Please, just listen." I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You lied," I said flatly. "Not just once. Not just about Darren. You lied every step of the way. You thought if you threw enough guilt at me, I'd stay. You thought love meant I'd shut up and raise some bartender's kid like an idiot." She blinked, stunned that I wasn't shouting, that I wasn't raging, just cold. "Done." I panicked, she whispered. I didn't know what to do. I made a mistake. I shook my head. "No, Rachel. You made a series of very deliberate, selfish choices. You could have come clean the night you found out. Instead, you tried to trap me." She started crying. Again. Said she didn't know how it had come to this. Said she never meant to hurt me. And for the first time in months, I actually believed her. She didn't mean to hurt me. She just didn't care if she did, as long as it meant saving herself. That's the difference. She asked if I'd at least meet the baby. Said she wanted me to see what we lost. I almost laughed. There was no we. Not anymore. I told her to leave. She begged. I shut the door. And that was it. No screaming. No social media rants. No second chances. Just a door quietly closing on the woman who burned everything down and expected me to stand in the ashes, smiling. She could raise that baby with Olivia, her therapist, or Jason the bartender for all I cared. I was done playing the fool in someone else's disaster. And if she thought that was the end, oh no, the fallout was still coming. And it was going to be biblical. Rachel thought she could control the narrative. That even after the DNA truth dropped like a nuke, she could salvage her little empire of sympathy with a few more teary Instagram posts, some vague poetry about motherhood, and a healing journey #. But that only works when you haven't left a trail of lies wider than a runway. Enter Tanya. Remember Darren's now ex-wife? She'd been quiet for a while. Too quiet. I figured she was nursing her wounds in peace. Turns out, she was strategizing. About 2 weeks after Rachel showed up at my apartment with the "please don't leave me" face, Tanya went scorched earth. It started with a series of Instagram stories. The first one was a black screen with a caption, "Ever wonder what it's like to have your husband cheat on you with a woman who gets pregnant and blames someone else? Buckle up." Then she dropped everything. Screenshots of Rachel's messages to Darren. Photos of Rachel and Darren at some sketchy motel, complete with a time-stamped receipt from the front desk Tanya had somehow gotten a copy of. Voice notes Rachel sent Darren, talking about how William will never find out if we time it right. And finally, the DNA test results. No names were directly shown in that one, just the headline. Paternity not confirmed, with the date blurred, but trust me, anyone who'd been following Rachel's baby saga could put 2 and 2 together. It spread like wildfire. Reddit threads, Facebook groups, Twitter reposts. People who had once liked all her baby bump pics were now tagging each other in comments like, "Yo, is this about that Rachel girl?" Meanwhile, Rachel's entire support network crumbled overnight. Olivia? Radio silent. Rachel's therapist, the new one, the empowerment through delusion one, apparently dropped her as a client. Probably to avoid a malpractice suit. Rachel's mom and dad. Yeah, they weren't built for public embarrassment. Once the family group chat turned into a blame fest, they took the coward's route and ghosted her completely. Even Jason, the bartender bio dad, chimed in. Sort of. He posted on Facebook that he'd been contacted by a woman claiming her child was his, and that he had no interest in co-parenting under false pretenses. False pretenses. That might be the most generous description anyone's given Rachel during this entire dumpster fire. I didn't have to do anything. That's the best part. I didn't release a statement. I didn't post receipts. I didn't out her to her parents, her friends, or her followers. I just watched, letting the internet and her own choices do the work for me. Rachel sent me a few desperate texts. This has gotten out of hand. You need to tell people that this was private. You said you wouldn't say anything. She really didn't get it. She built her little empire on pity and curated lies, then acted shocked when it collapsed under the weight of the truth. She kept looking for someone to blame, some angle to work, some shred of control to cling to. But there wasn't one. She had burned every bridge, and now she was stranded, alone, holding a baby that reminded her every day of the disaster she tried to gift wrap and hand to me. And me? I was fine. More than fine. My life didn't implode, it clarified. The fake friends revealed themselves. The manipulative in-laws exposed their true loyalties. And Rachel? She stripped away every illusion I ever had about love, loyalty, and trust. Not in a poetic, I learned to love again way. Just in a brutally honest, thank God I dodged that bullet kind of way. Mark, my actual best friend, ride or die from the beginning, took me out for drinks once the chaos fully went public. He toasted to freedom. To never raise another man's baby unless you actually want to, he said. Damn right. I never responded to Rachel again. Didn't need to. The last thing I heard was that she moved in with a cousin out in the suburbs. She's apparently trying to rebuild. Whatever that means. The baby's fine, from what I hear. And that's good, because none of this was her fault. She didn't ask to be a bargaining chip in her mom's life-fueled emotional hostage situation. But that doesn't mean I owe anyone a damn thing. I owe myself. For walking away. For not falling for the pity traps. For not giving in when everyone, was trying to shame me into saving a woman who lit the fire and handed me the match. Let them call me cold. Let them call me cruel. Let them rewrite me as the villain in their group chats. They weren't the ones being asked to raise a lie. I was. And I chose myself.